You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
And today I'm back with another House Call edition. Looking forward to answering your questions. We actually have a couple follow-ups today, so looking forward to getting to those as well. And remember, if you have your own question, please do feel free to email, or I should say the best way to get in touch to make sure that we get your question is certainly to go to stephencabral.com/askcabral. Just feel free to ask whatever question you have there. You can just leave your first name, last initial, or feel free to leave your whole name, and we will absolutely get to your question. Now, one little note I wanted to make is, if I have not gotten to your question yet, please do email it again. It simply means I have not gotten it, or it got lost in a flurry of emails, and I do apologize about that. But just email it again, and I will absolutely answer it. Usually I can answer all the questions that come in within 2 to 3 weeks. And so if you haven't heard it within 3 weeks, please do ask it again, and I will certainly get to that. All right, let's get into our first question of the day. It is a follow-up from Alexandra A, who was on yesterday's show. Hopefully you tuned into that. So Alexandra A is asking, why am I experiencing amenorrhea? So amenorrhea, so if you're just not familiar with the term, again, like in conventional medicine, we like to give everything, a specific special name. But specifically, when we're talking about amenorrhea, it simply refers to the absence of a menstrual cycle or a woman's period each month. So here's the reasons why. And you know what? It's usually very straightforward, but in some cases there are rarer instances, and I'm going to give you those as well. But here's the main reason. The main reason is there's some type of stress on the body. All right, so the stress in the body could be this. A lot of people, when they begin a new exercise program, they get into it too much. It's too rigorous. And when it's too rigorous, the body can go into more of that fight or flight, more of that sympathetic nervous system. Now remember, that's survival mode, and it can start to shut down a woman's menstrual cycle. The same thing happens if you've lost too much weight too fast, or you've dropped your calories too fast, or you start intermittent fasting. That can drop normal menstrual cycle as well, just creating amenorrhea. So a lower body weight. So really, when a woman's body fat drops below 13% and certainly below 10%, it could be the absence then of a normal cycle. And stress in general, too much stress, psychological stress as well, can absolutely create and cause amenorrhea. Now, some of the other issues, which I just don't see as common in my practice, but they're certainly there, are PCOS, thyroid malfunction. So not typically lower thyroid, but typically what I see is higher thyroid, overactive thyroid. I've actually seen it more common, but low thyroid could absolutely cause it as well. I just see it more in hyperthyroid, so too fast. Pituitary gland issues, like that can go along with the thyroid as well. And then any type of scarring, any type of, actual biomechanical issues. I guess that's not the exact word I'm looking for, but anything that within the reproductive system that wouldn't be working properly because of maybe surgery, accident, whatever might be happening, that could cause some type of amenorrhea as well. So what I'm saying from this is that first, we need to look at stress. What are there any new stresses that could have popped up? Did you start a new exercise program? Did you lose a lot of weight? Did you start to reduce calories? Are you on a different type of diet? Did work get more stressful? Family relationships? Those are all things to look at. And then you can look at the more rare ones. So definitely look into that. Definitely check into that. And hopefully that answers your question. All right, Stephanie is up next. Stephanie is asking, I have a son that has Aspergers. Is there anything we can do? So maybe you are wondering what Aspergers is. So let me actually just refresh for our audience what that is if they haven't heard of Asperger's before. But it is a term, it's still used today, absolutely, but I believe it was kind of rolled into the autism spectrum disorder, I'd say maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So it's kind of just everything is now under one blanket term, which is essentially autism. And Asperger's is a lot of times thought of as more of higher functioning. And there actually a lot of children with Asperger's can have above average, maybe verbal skills, learning those types of things, but they have sometimes more difficulty with nonverbal based skills like eye contact and being able to read others isn't as easy. Sometimes more introverted, kind of more one-sided, but it's more of, I would say, more of the nonverbal, and that's absolutely been my experience working with children with Asperger's as well. And so here's how I look at it. I look at the same exact way that I look at autism. And that is by looking at very specific things. So I want to give Stephanie some credit here. So Stephanie actually eliminated wheat and possibly dairy. I'm not positive, but please do eliminate dairy if you haven't done that as well. But she eliminated wheat, and immediately she saw some great improvements with her son. And that's fantastic. That is absolutely what you should do. So there are many books written on this particular subject. I actually did one on my Friday review. We are, 148 episodes in. So which Friday review, you'll have to kind of tune back, but it is a book that I talked about, and it's called Enzymes and Autism, I believe. I'm a GAPS certified practitioner as well. It just means GAPS is gut and psychology syndrome, studied with Dr. Natasha McBride. I don't use that as my exclusive practice because what my practice really is I don't believe in any one thing. What I do is I take the best of everything. I have no ego involved in this process. I studied all around the world simply to learn the best from all of the masters, and I said no one system of medicine has all the answers. No one could have all the answers. It's not how it works. So my practice is simply the assimilation of everything that there is. That includes conventional medicine. People think that I don't believe in it. That's not true at all. I absolutely do believe in it, and I believe there's a time and place for everything. But I will always use natural-based practices first, unless it's an acute-based circumstance, an emergency. And then if that's the case, you should absolutely go to an emergency room. You should absolutely seek out acute medical care. That's imperative. So what do I do when I have a child come in with autism or executive functioning disorder or any of the different terms that we want to give children now? Okay, here's exactly what I do. I immediately begin with a hair tissue mineral analysis. I need to see if they have what's called a copper toxicity, low zinc, high copper, which a lot of kids with ADD, ADHD, autism have. I also want to look for high nervous system stress, and I can look at that because I can see higher levels of calcium and lower levels of magnesium. All right, I want to look at that specifically. I want to look at lower levels of phosphorus, possibly from too high of a catabolic nature in the body, but also protein digestion. Then I want to look at the heavy metals in that hair tissue mineral analysis. And I'm going to say, is there elevated levels of aluminum and mercury and anything else? And of course, I want to work on that if there is. Now, second, what I do is what's called an organic acids test. Let me do a whole show on this, but let me give you the quick answer. Okay, organic acids test. That is the number one test you could possibly do to look at gut function. I'm all about using the best of the best. So if there's a better test in the future, I'll use it. But for right now, the organic acid test is the one that I use. And I'm going to look at fungal overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, and bacterial overgrowth, which is extremely common in children with autism, Asperger's, you name it. I mean, you have to look at that test. It's an amazing test, and you have to clear up the gut, okay? So we see great things happen when we start to remove that yeast, we start to remove that bacteria. Now, believe me, this is all scientifically researched. This is all science-based. There is no woo-woo, there's no voodoo, there's nothing like that. That's not how I operate. This is the real deal. Okay, those are the two tests that you should run if you can. Again, unfortunately, they're not covered by health insurance because we're helping people get better, right? We're not diagnosing disease and giving pharmaceuticals. How dare we try to help people get better? But the third test, if you'd like to run one, is simply inflammation-based. And you can run an omega-3 test and see what your son's inflammation levels are. But if you can't afford to run that one, that's okay. What I would do is I would just use a omega-3 fish oil, which has just been proven over and over and over again to be so beneficial. 2 to 3 grams per day over the age of, let's say, 8 years old. You'll do 1 gram to 2 grams, but then work your way up if they're younger than 8 years old. Okay. So, Stephanie, that's where you start. Take out the wheat, take out the dairy. So I'll give you some quick things to work on because you do want quick things. Take out the wheat, take out the dairy, take out the soy, take out the corn, and that's it. So start there. And then if needed, you'll look at other food sensitivity. So a food sensitivity test, it's another test to run, but so great because your son could be sensitive to eggs, and every time he eats them, he's having an inflammatory reaction. He could be having issues with nuts, and a lot of people believe in nut butters. The GAPS protocol uses a lot of nut butter. I've seen people be sensitive and not be able to digest almonds and things like that. And they use a lot of almond flour. I'm not a believer in nut flour. I'll go into that in the future. But you have a handful of nuts. You don't have a cup of almond flour. That's just doesn't make sense. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. Stephanie, I hope that answered your question. I have a huge spot in my heart for working with kids. So if I didn't answer it as well as I should have, please do send me another note and I would like to help you with that. All right, Greg is up next. Greg is asking, since Bulgar wheat is an ancient grain, does that make it okay to eat? All right, great question. Let's go into that right now. All right, so when Greg is asking, since Bulgar wheat is considered a less hybridized, right, an older form of an ancient grain, does that make it really better? Because it is wheat, right? It's just a different type of wheat. So I will say that, yes, Bulgar wheat is actually a much heartier and healthier version of our newer hybridized wheat. So it means that it's low in fat. It is higher in manganese, magnesium. It has a nice amount of fiber as well. So pretty good for overall constipation-based issues and heart health-based issues. It has been known to kind of blood sugar levels. Now, this is making sure that it's not refined, of course, right? Like one of the forms of Bulgar wheat that a lot of people, they might not even know that they're eating, is in tabbouleh. And so tabbouleh is kind of a Middle Eastern dish, and a lot of people use that as an appetizer. They use it with some type of bread or just even spoon it out. And that can be moderately healthy for you as well. It contains B vitamins and a lot of great things like that. So what I will say is this, is it's actually quite high in fiber. I see that as one of the main benefits. And it does have a fair amount of niacin, iron, magnesium, just a little bit of some of the other B vitamins. But here's where I want you just to be careful, Greg, is that my issue with wheat in general is that so many people have gut-based issues, and Bulgar wheat is still a wheat and it contains gluten. And since it contains gluten, it can exacerbate issues with candida, it can exacerbate bacterial overgrowth and create inflammation in the gut as well, leading to more increased intestinal-based permeability. And also autoimmune-based issues, thyroid-based issues being one of those as well. So if you're only having it every once in a while, I don't see it as a problem. I really don't, unless you've done a food sensitivity test. And if you did the food sensitivity test, which I recommend every human alive do, you can just literally, it's a finger poke test. And again, if you want to see the one that we recommend, and of course you can get our recommendations just by going to stephencabral.com/store and just looking at the food sensitivity test. Amazing test. Really, again, everyone should do it. It'll tell you if you're sensitive to wheat and gluten and gliadin. And you simply have a little bit of wheat a couple days before, take the test and see if you react to it from an IgG perspective. Now, the whole other big thing with wheat is that in the U.S., at least, people are having wheat with their cereal, bagel, or muffin in the morning. Then they're having wheat with their sandwich and bread at lunch. And then for dinner, they're having more wheat with bread or with pasta or whatever it might be. So you're having wheat like literally every 4 hours. And so that leads to just inflammation on top of inflammation on top of inflammation. But if you're having Bulgar wheat once a week or twice a week, not as big of a deal. So Greg, look at it that way. It's not always everything in moderation. That certainly is not true. But if you're someone that doesn't have any gluten-based sensitivities and you're only having Bulgar wheat every once in a while, and especially something like tabbouleh, because you enjoy it, well, I don't see a problem with that. So get yourself tested for the food sensitivity test to make sure you're not having reactions to it. If you have any gut-based issues, well, you have to eliminate it at least for right now, and then look into it in the future. Thank you again for tuning in to another Cabral Concept. Love answering your questions. It's already the end of the week. We're going to come up with a new Monday edition. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the 8 proven ways to be happier. Check that out. Looking forward to speaking with you then.
Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.